Why?
She's requested for it.
So she said that introduce me, I will give a speech because I welcome them. And you introduce the guests and all.
What a
and
cunt.
then
No, then
felicitate me
Nuzhat.
in the end.
End. Okay, ठीक
And then
है.
felicitate
So
me in the end.
principal's introduction, principal speak, Nuzhat introduction, Nuzhat speak. Then Justice Patel introduction, felicitation, Asmita.
I'll write it, please. I won't understand.
Asmita Baba.
My handwriting. Yeah.
Principal. Madam Principal. I request Madam Principal, Dr. Mrs. Asmita Vaidya. First felicitation. रुक तेरे को मैं बना के देती हूँ पूरा.
ठीक है.
ठीक है. Dr. Mrs. Asmita Vaidya. Understood?
Yeah.
Justice Patel. Then him.
I am the one.
Nuzhat.
I now request Professor Nuzhat Sheikh.
हाँ, assistant professor in charge, assistant professor Nuzhat Sheikh.
Professor in charge.
Assistant professor Nuzhat Sheikh. Understood? Next is Ashwin Sami, correct? हाँ, Tanisha Vaidya. Miss Tanisha Sami. Yes. Our assistant, our general secretary. I would like to call upon our general secretary, Miss Tanisha Singh. Okay?
Mr. Cyrus Virgin.
Me, our assistant general secretary, Miss Disha Sonapal. Okay? Who is next? Aarti Paloma. And then
One sec. Aarti Raghavan and under who you are writing for Keshu, you are required Paloma. This is Paloma.
Aarti Paloma. Is Om here? Is Paramya here?
I don't know.
Is Paramya here? तो क्या बोलूँ? Okay, 1 second. Is Paramya here?
Lighting, we have to stay down, lighting the lamp.
Lighting of the
Then they
lamp.
come up.
Lighting of the lamp, Paloma. You have to sit. Hey, bhai.
You tell us this, you tell us this.
Yeah,
Let's
please.
go. Keshu sir.
So Param is not here. Om.
Arey, wait, we're writing.
Tanisha, 1 second.
We have to sit
Is
down.
Param coming? Om. So I'm not putting him.
Legal solicitor.
Tanisha again.
Our general secretary.
Open the curtain. Justice Patel wants to open the curtain. Bhai, please open this. I'm opening.
That's not the button.
This is the one. Open. Like open it.
Principal and Nuzhat working and Tanisha in that order.
And lighting of the lamp. जल्दी से करा दो.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the panel discussion of the 26th DM Harish Memorial Government Law College International Moot Court Competition 2025. We kindly request all guests to put their mobile phones on silent before we begin. To begin the discussion on a solemn note, we shall commence with the lighting of the lamp. I request all our esteemed dignitaries to kindly come forward for the same.
या श्वेतपत्रं
request our dignitaries to take their place on the stage.
Wobbly, so made it.
Who's where? No, this is Ashwin.
Which is me?
I have no idea.
I'm here.
Yeah, I know.
Kushal.
On behalf of the Moot Court Association of Government Law College and the D.M. Harish Foundation, we would like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone present here for the panel discussion of the 26th D.M. Harish Memorial Government Law College International Moot Court Competition 2025. Government Law College has been hosting India's first ever international moot court competition in association with the D.M. Harish Foundation for over 2 decades now. Since its very inception, this moot has become widely acclaimed amongst law schools within the nation and beyond. The D.M. Harish Memorial Moot Court Competition is amongst the oldest and most prestigious moots in this country. Our topic of discussion for this evening is free speech and censorship in the age of social media, necessity or overreach. In today's digital era, the balance between free speech and censorship on social media platforms has become a critical issue, raising complex questions about regulation on individual rights. This timely discussion will provide an in-depth analysis on the consequences of these challenges and their potential impact on the future of online engagement. Our esteemed panelists will navigate through these complexities, offering insights and engaging in critical discourse on the topic of discussion today. We have amidst us today our Madam Principal, Dr. Mrs. Asmita Vaidya, a university ranker at the graduate and postgraduate level. With an MBA in Human Resource Management, she pursued doctoral research in industrial law and did her PhD in the year 2006. She started her career as a teacher at the Postgraduate Department of Law, Nagpur University in the year 1995. Dr. Vaidya has chaired many technical sessions and delivered many lectures as a resource person on different legal topics such as cyber law, intellectual property law, human rights, women's rights, and surrogacy to name a few. Additionally, Madam has worked as an announcer on Nagpur television for 7 years, during which she was also a vocal artist for Akashvani. I would like to thank our Madam Principal, Dr. Asmita Vaidya, for the guidance and direction that she has provided to the Moot Court Association and its functioning. We now request our Madam Principal to kindly say a few words.
Ma Saraswati Lavanya. Today's panelist, Honorable Shri Justice Gautam Patel sir, former Judge, High Court Bombay, Shri A.M. Diwan sir, Ashwin Sanghi sir, Shri Cyrus sir, Aarti madam, and our own Professor Kishu Daswani. All the professors who are present here, all the dignitaries of the dais, and my beloved students. Today's panel of discussion is very, very interesting. Today's topic of panel discussion is very interesting. Every person sitting here, being human, have inherent capacity to express his feelings. Freedom of speech, the right allows individual to express without fear. Freedom of speech and expression is the fundamental right to hold and express ideas through various means, including oral language, through print media, and now we express ourselves through social media. It is considered fundamental in a democracy, the free flow of information and the ability of citizens to hold their government accountable. There are n number of advantages of getting expressed personally as well as socially. To name a few, self-development, promotion of diversity of thoughts and expression. It also contributes to a well-informed and engaged society, and it also enables us to participate in public discourse. To express oneself do have limitations. It is subject to national security, hate speech, or incitement of violence, and should maintain the public order. Today, we are living in cyber age, and we always like to express ourselves through social media. It is the fact that there is no censorship. Censorship is the separation of speech or other forms of expression that are deemed objectionable, harmful, and politically sensitive. The rise of social media and censorship and other online platforms has raised new questions about the freedom of speech and censorship, as these platforms generally are getting used to spread misinformation and sometimes violence too. On one hand, proponents of freedom of speech argue that it is a fundamental right that must be protected at all costs. They believe that individuals should have the right to express their opinions and ideas without fear of censorship. They also argue that freedom of speech is essential for healthy democracy, as it always for open exchange of ideas and the challenges of established norms and power structures. On the other hand, critics of unrestricted freedom of speech, they say that it is potential for harm and abuse that can arise from unregulated expression. They argue that certain forms of speech, such as hate speech, misinformation, can lead to social unrest. They also highlight the need to protect marginalized and vulnerable communities from harmful effect of unchecked speech. The debate over freedom of speech and censorship in India is further complicated by country's complex social and political dynamics issues such as religious intolerance, political polarization. This has also played a role in shaping a contours of debates. Therefore, we can definitely say in conclusion that the debate over the freedom of speech and censorship in India is multifaceted and contentious issue that touches on fundamental questions of rights, political and social, and the nature of democracy. We are required to find the balance between the two. Friends, today we are very fortunate to have a panel of 6 eminent personalities who can focus very well on different aspects of the subject. I am really thankful to Honorable Sri Justice Gautam Patel sir, Diwan sir, Ashwin sir, Cyrus sir, Aarti madam, and Kishu Daswani sir, along with the moderator of today's function, Shri Harish sir, who is a senior advocate, for giving their precious time to us. On behalf of Government Law College, Mumbai, I welcome you all.
Thank you.
I also appreciate the efforts taken by Moot Court Association, Government Law College, Mumbai, Professor in charge, Assistant Professor Sheikh Madam, team of Tanisha Singh of Moot Court Association JLC for their continuous efforts to make this event successful. Once again, I welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you for that lovely note, ma'am. We also have amongst us our beloved Professor in charge, Assistant Professor Nuzhat Sheikh. Professor Sheikh joined GLC as an assistant professor in the year 2013. She holds a BSc degree and has qualified for the Junior Research Fellowship and National Eligibility Test in Law, Criminology, and Human Rights and Duties. She is a PhD research scholar and has over 30 national and international publications. I now request ma'am to address the audience.
Yeah, good evening all, the dignitaries, guests, and all present over here. Myself, Sheikh Nuzhat Afroz, Assistant Professor, Government Law College, Mumbai, in charge faculty, Moot Court Association. Honorable Principal, Dr. Asmita Vaidya, Moderator, Mr. Harish Jaktiani, Senior Advocate, Panelist, Honorable Mr. Justice Gautam Patel, Mr. Hayam Devon, Mr. Ashwin Sanghi, Mr. Cyrus Barucha, Ms. Aarti Raghavan, and Professor Kishu Daswani, sir. Government Law College, Mumbai, in association with DM Harish Foundation, has organized today a panel discussion on free speech and censorship in the age of social media, necessity or overreach. So I would like to start with a quote. If we do not believe in freedom of speech and expression, for those we despise, we do not believe in it at all. First, we'll see the topic of today. We have to first understand speech. So speech again is the medium to communicate with masses or group or community or the gathering live or through some media like the online platform on a given issue of topic which concerns the people. Speech is nothing but the expression of thoughts, ideas or opinions through verbal communications, either spoken or written, sometime including gestures. It is a fundamental in nature, which is guaranteed by the Indian Constitution and is protected by laws. And free speech refers to the right to express one's thought, ideas, opinion without fear of censorship, reprisal, or persecution. So it is fundamental in nature and recognized as the most essential human rights without which existence and presence of individual liberty and democracy has no meaning. So it is the free exchange of ideas and opinions. So what it gives? Birth to the new ideas, innovations, it fosters creativity, promotes new thought process, address decency, and it protects the minority rights of all kinds. So the censorship of free speech in the age of social media is necessity, but it shall not be selective and oppressive. It shall not be restricting people from expressing themselves. The expression guaranteed under the freedom of speech and the expression as the fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a) in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, we, being the largest democracy and multi-party system, needs to practice and exhibit multiple ideologies and principles, and the country which holds 5 major religions and more than 20 sects practice by masses with a 1.5 billion population. So the duty of the legal institutions and the investigative agency is to safeguard the right of each and every citizen without bias and failure. So the Apex Court had time to time protected the individuals against such arbitrary and the illegal acts and the actions taken. In Shreya Singhal versus Union of India in 2015, Section 66A of the Information Technology Act was struck down by the Supreme Court of India, which penalizes sending offensive message online. So the court held that section was unconstitutional as it is violative of the fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression. And the latest incidents in the state of Maharashtra fetches the need to safeguard the right of free speech in the light of satires in comedy, reciting poems as a part of entertainment segment. The misuse of political and the muscle power to silence the performers is on rise. And the threat of life given to the artist, activist, etc., the destruction and the damages caused to such places of performances, sending a message of threat and fear in the minds of public, not only the performers but to the public at large, It leaves us to think, analyze, and protect the free speech everywhere on every existing platforms. So as aptly said by Martin Luther King, injustice anywhere is threat to justice everywhere. So I thank, at last but not the least, I thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to express myself on free speech as the fundamental right guaranteed by the Indian Constitution. So thank you all. I would like to end up with a quote of Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart in Ginsburg versus United States in 1966, dissenting, censorship reflects a society's lack of confidence in itself. It is a hallmark of an authoritarian regime. Thank you.
Thank you for that enriching note, ma'am. Our first panelist for the evening is former judge of the Honorable Bombay High Court, Honorable Mr. Justice G.S. Patel. Justice Patel is a graduate of the St. Xavier's College and Government Law College, Mumbai. He built a distinguished legal career, excelling in commercial and civil litigation while championing environmental causes. His passion for environmental law took him to the University of California, Berkeley School of Law in 1994, where he interned with the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. He later served as Honorary Secretary of the Bombay Bar Association before his appointment as a High Court judge in 2013. Beyond the courtroom, he wrote extensively for Mumbai Mirror, an economic and political weekly, and taught law at GLC. His contributions to education, environmental conservation, and advocacy will continue to inspire generations. Now I request our principal, Dr. Mrs. Asmita Vaidya, to felicitate Honorable Justice G.S. Patel.
What are you getting?
I have no idea.
Another coffee?
No, I finished my coffee. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next panelist, His Excellency Mr. Hayam Dewan, is a native of Jerusalem and a graduate of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He was Israel's ambassador to The Hague. A seasoned diplomat with over 3 decades of experience, he has represented Israel in key positions across India, Sri Lanka, Canada, and Ethiopia. Since August 2011, he has served as an ambassador to the Netherlands, strengthening bilateral ties and engaging in international diplomacy. Ambassador Devon is also known for his contributions to international development and humanitarian aid, playing a significant role in Israel's global cooperation initiatives. His career reflects a deep commitment to fostering diplomatic relations and global partnerships. I now request our Professor in Charge, Assistant Professor Nuzhat Sheikh, to felicitate Mr. Hayam Dewan.
Thank you, ma'am. Today, we also have with us Mr. Ashwin Sanghi, who is counted among India's highest-selling English fiction authors. He was educated at the Cathedral and John Connon School and St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. He holds an MBA from Yale University, USA, and a doctorate in literature from the JECRC University, Rajasthan. He has written several bestsellers, such as The Rosabelle Line, Chanakya's Chant, The Krishna Key, The Sialkot Saga, Keepers of the Kal Chakra, and 2 New York Times best-selling crime thrillers with James Patterson, Private India and Private Delhi. Mr. Sanghi also mentors, co-writes, and edits titles in the immensely popular 13-Step series. Mr. Sanghi has been included by Forbes India in their Celebrity 100 and by the New Indian Express in their Culture Power list. He is a winner of the WBR Iconic Achievers Award 2018, the Kalinga Popular Choice Award 2021, and the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Recognition 2023, among many others. I would now like to call upon our General Secretary, Mr. Nisha Singh, to felicitate Mr. Sanghi.
That's yours.
Is it?
Thank you, Ms. Tanisha. Our next panelist, Mr. Cyrus Brocha, is a renowned Indian television personality, comedian, actor, and writer. He grew up in Mumbai and attended the Cathedral and John Convent School before studying political science at the University of Mumbai. He first gained widespread fame as a video jockey on MTV India in the late 1990s. He further solidified his reputation with The Week That Wasn't, a news satire show on CNN IBN that presented current affairs through a humorous lens. Mr. Brocha has also made notable appearances in films such as The Shawkeens. Beyond television and film, Mr. Brocha is an active podcaster. His popular podcast, Cyrus Says, features candid conversations with guests from diverse fields covering topics like politics, culture, and everyday life. Known for his relatable humor and down to earth personality, he remains one of India's most cherished entertainers. With decades of experience across various mediums, Mr. Cyrus Brocha continues to leave audiences laughing while offering fresh perspectives on contemporary issues. I would now like to call upon our Assistant General Secretary, Ms. Disha Sonavane, to felicitate Mr. Cyrus Brocha.
It's not a bad thing.
Thank you. Today we also have with us Ms. Aarti Raghavan, who is an advocate practicing at the Honorable Bombay High Court. She is actively engaged in significant legal cases, including challenges to the provisions of the Information Technology Act 2021. Beyond her legal career, she has made substantial contributions to IT for Change, a Bengaluru-based non-profit organization. As a part of the organization's Recognize, Resist, Remedy project, she has authored scholarly works on gendered cyber abuse and women's democratic rights and freedoms. Ms. Raghavan has also written for publications such as The Hindu and The Wire, addressing issues related to women's safety in intimate spaces and legal ethics. Additionally, she has participated in various media discussions, including a Wire primetime segment on media freedom and related political matters, underscoring her commitment to press freedom and social justice. I now request Ms. Palomi Visaria to felicitate Ms. Aarti.
Thank you, Ms. Palomi. Our next and final panelist for the evening is Professor Kishu Daswani. Professor Daswani is an internationally recognized academician in the field of law and has been a professor at Government Law College for over 30 years. He has contributed as a professor at many prestigious colleges and universities in India and abroad, which include Chulalongkorn University, Thailand, University of Navarra, Spain, and Naval War College, Goa. He has worked as an expert panelist for UNICEF in a symposium on child labor in India. He has also worked on the amendment of the Commercial Division Bill to a select committee appointed by the Rajya Sabha. I now request our General Secretary, Ms. Tanisha Singh, to felicitate Professor Kishu Daswani.
Thank you, Tanisha. I would now like to introduce our moderator for this evening's panel discussion, Mr. Harish. Mr. Jagtiani is a senior advocate at the Honorable Bombay High Court, specializing in litigation and arbitration. He is the founder of OSS Counsel and Advisory. With a master's degree in constitutional and international law, he was designated a senior counsel with the title of senior advocate in 1994. He is a member of key legal associations like the Supreme Court Bar Association and the Bombay Bar Association, boasting an impressive career representing major banks, corporations, and public figures. He has excelled in diverse disputes from commercial and constitutional to matrimonial and tax-related matters. As a respected presence in the international arbitration fraternity, he has notably served clients at renowned forums such as the ICC, LCIA, SIAC, and DIAC. I now request Disha to felicitate Mr. Jagdian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Disha. I would now like to request Tanisha to felicitate our Madam Principal, Dr. Mrs. Asmita Vaidya. Thank you, Tanisha. I would now like to request Disha to felicitate our Professor in charge, Madam Nuzat Sheikh. Thank you. It is indeed an honor to host such an illustrious panel today. And on that note, we shall now begin with the panel discussion. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone, Madam Principal, my distinguished panelists, and friends in the audience. You know, when she was introducing me, she forgot to mention that I was a part-time professor here for about 5 or 6 years. But looking at Kishu's performance, he's been here for 30 years. They actually threw me out after 5 years. So, deference. We have an interesting topic today. That's free speech and censorship in the age of social media and its necessity or overreach. Now, I remember when I was in school reading a poem called The Tongue, and it went something like this. The boneless tongue, so small and weak, can crush and kill, declared the Greek. The tongue destroys a greater horde. That was my tongue. The tongue destroys a greater horde, the Turks assert, than does the sword. Now, the ability to speak and to laugh is what distinguishes human beings from animals. Except, of course, that being a parrot, they can talk but without thinking, and a hyena which can laugh without any humor. Now, I know a few human beings like this, but that would be the subject matter of another panel discussion. But be that as it may, history is made and nations are created by the sole force of inspiring speeches that have instilled idealism, courage, and the spirit of self-sacrifice for a greater purpose. In India, speeches by Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru and other freedom fighters galvanized millions of people in this country and in the world over to fight for the cause of freedom. And on 8th August 1942, to propel the Quit India movement, the Mahatma said, "Do or die, we shall either free India or die in the attempt. We shall not live to see the perpetuation of slavery." The aftermath was that more than 100,000 leaders, freedom fighters, were imprisoned and suffered harsh punishment. But at the end of it, India gained its freedom through non-violence and through a process of civil disobedience. On the other hand, there were other leaders and despots like the anti-Semitic leaders and with inflammatory speeches like of Adolf Hitler, which brainwashed an entire nation to believe that genocide of Jews was justified because in the narrative put forward by him that Jews were responsible for Germany's hardships, the outcome was the extermination of 6 million Jews. Now I may refer to two famous quotes which exemplifies the for and against viewpoints of free speech. The first is by Edmund Burke, a political philosopher, and he said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for the people of good conscience to remain silent. And in contrast to this, Winston Churchill said that the abuse of free speech is far worse than is far more dangerous than the curtailment of free speech. Now these are opposing points of view and from very, very eminent world leaders. Now the vexed question before the panelists is striking a meaningful and delicate balance between the laudable values of free speech and the harm that an unrestricted and unchecked rabble-rousing speeches can cause. And to this is the need to strike a balance of free speech and censorship. In the age of social media, where platforms and intermediaries such as Facebook, X, which was formerly Twitter, YouTube, and Google disseminate views and opinions literally at the speed of light and influence countless minds with the potentials of wreaking a devastating outcome. The freedom of speech generally is frowned upon by people in power whose authority is questioned and who have a vested interest in perpetuating their power. For instance, take a couple of historical examples. Copernicus, he declared with all his knowledge of astronomy that the world is round. Now this annoyed the church, this annoyed the papal authorities, and he paid for it with his life because that was not the view entertained by the church. And thereafter, Galileo also had this theory, again with astronomy at his command. He said that the earth revolves around the sun and not the other way around. At that time, the church and the papal authorities considered the earth to be the center of the universe. He, of course, didn't pay with his life because he apologized. But when he was on his knees and apologized, he's supposed to have muttered, but still it moves. That's the compulsion of free speech. Now, in stark contrast, in the age of social media, we have an example of the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was born with the extensive use of the internet and Facebook, and the despotic and authoritarian leader, Hosni Mubarak of Egypt, was deposed and replaced by a civil society. Now, this is exactly what social media has been able to achieve. Now, the internet and social media platforms being universally accessible to people of all classes, creeds, races, this has undoubtedly united the world and in an unprecedented way. However, this very accessibility has also given rise to a paradox. While these platforms foster connection and inclusivity, they also serve as conduits for toxic content, hate speeches, obscenity, and vulgarity. Such negative influences can have a destructive impact on the character and morale of the young and vulnerable, while simultaneously exacerbating societal polarizations, violence, and hatred and destruction. In the last few weeks, we have seen consequences of the exercise of the right of free speech and the attempts to curb the same by powerful vested interests. It is for the panelists here to evaluate and place these incidents in their contextual and legal perspectives. We have seen the following episodes unfold just recently. One is Abu Azmi glorified Aurangzeb, and its aftermath was the destruction of property and riots in Nagpur. Then we had Ranveer Alavadia, whose incestuous humor had to be eventually resolved on this show called India's Got Latent, and this was eventually resolved by the Supreme Court. Then we have Kunal Kamra's parody on Eknath Shinde and the ballistic reaction of his followers, which included lodging FIRs, etc., against him. To discuss this all important topic and to consider the worldwide situation of the state of democracy, we have with us an eminent and diverse panel, which includes Justice Gautam Patel, who delivered a path-breaking judgment in the case of Kunal Kamra, that is calling for a fact that is, he was asked to evaluate whether a fact-check unit was legal or not, and eventually he held that the fact-check unit which had been set up was ultra vires the act and was unconstitutional. Then we have with us Haim Devon. Is a senior diplomat and an ambassador, and I must tell you, he's one of my oldest friends. We met in 1977 when I was to go to Israel, and I was invited there for a seminar, and I was interviewed by him. So, and thereafter we haven't looked back. We followed each other's fortunes all over the world. I've stayed with him in various countries that he has been to. So we have him as to give his views on the Middle East crisis right now. Currently, we'll have them. Then we have a renowned author that is sitting next to me, Ashwin Sanghi, and of course, a laugh-a-minute stand-up comedian, Cyrus Brocha. And then we have Aarti with us, who participated or who appeared in the Kamal Kamra's case with her senior, Navroz Sirvai. And of course, we have the beloved professor here, that is Kishu Daswani. Right. So with these opening remarks, we will now proceed to discuss this issue. And I would start off, before that, before I ask my first question and fire my first salvo, remember, it'll be a real privilege for me for a change to ask a question of a judge, because normally it's the other way around. In courts, they are the ones who ask questions, so I would be delighted to do that. But before we do that, I'm going to request each of my panelists, starting with Ms. Justice Patel, to take a couple of minutes and give his take or a broad conspectus of what this panel discussion is and where it leads to. So this way, I'll ask every other panelist to spend a couple of minutes, and then I'll ask my questions.
We shouldn't be having this debate at all. Where is the question of censorship? Who's going to police it? Who's going to control it? Are we talking about self-censorship? Are we talking about outside censors with what authority? We're talking about this in a certain context, social media, and that takes us back to the internet. I was at a lecture yesterday when I spoke at the Nehru Center, and one of the things I mentioned is that please understand that the internet is not just a network or a network of networks. It's an explosion of ideas. You can't stop ideas. They are being expressed everywhere at the speed of light. You also have to understand two other aspects, that words are and historically have always been dangerous to those in power, and that's why they're feared. Of all the species on the planet, as I said yesterday, we're the only ones who store information outside ourselves in the form of books, movies, films, drawings, art, cartoons, caricatures. Which means that this gets communicated to others. The idea of free speech as we currently know it is relatively recent, and there was an excellent article on this in the Financial Times a couple of weeks ago tracing the history of free speech. If you see free speech not as an absolute, because that has conceptual problems, but as a means to an end, as a check on authority, as a means to investigating the truth, there is no place in this for censorship. And when I say censorship, I'm talking about censorship beyond what the Constitution legitimately permits as a curtailment on the power, on the right of free speech under Article 19(1)(a). The trend today, unfortunately, is to expand the curtailment and to say that the right of free speech must be curtailed. And I'm sorry to say that not only is civil society saying this and politicians saying this, but to my great horror, so are some judges. And that's completely and flat out wrong. It's not constitutionally permissible. It's not socially desirable. Let me put it slightly differently and see where this takes us this evening. I'm going to accuse Cyrus Rocha today of being a Gaddar because he's dressed in a suit. He's normally in a striped t-shirt. Is somebody going to vandalize the Government Law College Hall as a result of that? And are we going to let them get away with
Justice
it?
Sir, I'm happy to take this as a compliment because I can't pronounce the word.
But you see,
But
that's
very
the
hard
approach
for
you
me to
must
say.
have. And apart from that, as Harish will readily attest, if you're going to be in public life, whether as a politician or as a judge, you better have the hide of a rhinoceros and learn to deal with this. Or in language that we understand, suck it up.
Thanks, Gautam. Haim, may we have some opening remarks from you?
Sorry.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this various panel. And to say hello to all the audience for the interest in very, very important subject. First and foremost, I would like to begin by saying this is a memorial of Fadi and Harish. And we knew him personally, Linda and I, when we were posted here almost 50 years ago. So we had the honor and the pleasure to talk to him, to learn from him, to see what a giant he was, and therefore I'm so pleased to be a member of this panel. I would take two sentences which you mentioned before. One of them, the need to strike a balance. The other one, expand the curtailment. In light of what's happening in Israel, and I will be talking about it more later, I probably prefer sitting over there rather than this as a panelist, because what's happening back there is very alarming, and I will allude to it. But in talking about freedom of speech, I would like just to give one example. Just 2 days ago, an Israeli professor, a well-known professor from the arts, she was nominated to get the Israeli prize, which is one of the top prizes being handed over for people of outstanding achievements. The Minister of Education of Israel withdrew her candidacy because he didn't like the fact that she...
Can we flip this mic, please? It's misbehaving. No. The mic is misbehaving. You have to change the mic. You got one on that side?
Yeah.
Just move it over.
You'll have to keep one person.
Or maybe the battery is dying. You need to plug it. Just give that to him. No, this battery is down. So just put it to charge or just plug it.
I hope this is not Government Law College's idea of censorship.
It's not working, just fading in and out. I didn't make it up.
So
Sometimes it is losing its.
Israel is a democracy, still a democracy. I'm quite worried about certain trends, but this example of a professor that was no outstanding professor that was nominated to get the Israel Prize for her achievements. It is being withdrawn by the Minister of Education because he didn't like the fact that she was criticizing the government of Israel. And it doesn't make a difference whether her criticism is valid or not. The fact that her candidacy was withdrawn, to me and to like-minded people, was shocking. So therefore, when Harish, you talk about striking the balance, or an honorable judge, when you talk about expanding the containers, these are the key points that I take with me in our discussion very soon. Thank you.
Ashwin, may we have your opening comments?
Well, my view is basically that if there is one land or one country or one region that has always illuminated the path for freedom of expression, it's probably Bharat. This was a country where it didn't matter whether you believed in which of the 33 kotis of gods. It didn't matter whether you were Shaivite or Vaishnavite, whether you believe in Shakti or Bhakti, whether you are ritualistic, spiritualistic, astic, nastic, or simply fantastic. This is a land in which you can decide to call a stone a shivling, and I decide to call that shivling a stone. We are both welcome. This is a land where I can decide to adopt Jesus Christ and put him on the facade of a temple, or make the Buddha into the 9th avatar of Vishnu. In that sense, I think faiths and Indic systems have always believed in multiple truths. And in some ways, a lot of the conflict arose as a result of a monotheistic view that there is one singular truth. That is almost the imposition of a singular truth on a plural world. And I think if there is one land which can lead the way, it is probably us. These concepts may have emerged in recent times through Europe and the US and the First Amendment and what have you, but in some ways, we were always open to debate, discussion, tarak. We even ridiculed the gods themselves. You go into Charvak and you look at the Gnostic philosophy, they ridicule Vedic rites themselves. But now temper that with a person that I once wrote about, Chanakya, who once said that the longevity of a man tends to sometimes be shortened by opening his mouth too often, either to eat or to speak. So that is where the temperance needs to come in, and this is an age-old debate, which I don't think we are going to see the end of today. It's going to carry on way beyond our grandkids and our great-grandkids and their great-grandkids. We will still be debating and discussing this, that what is that right balance between free speech and some element of censorship.
Thanks, Ashwin. Cyrus?
I feel the entire discussion is a little redundant. Of course, I'm a professional idiot, so don't listen to what I have to say. I just say the freedom of speech on a panel like this, everyone charges for speech, so where's the free speech anyway? That's just a warm-up. But coming back to the entire concept, again, I'll say it's redundant because if we have freedom of speech, then we should just have it. That's it. Like, there's no, it's like black and white. That's it. Freedom of speech. End of discussion. It's over. Or not end of discussion. Continue discussing without any physical violence. But we don't have that. What we do have, obviously, is everybody's got their own line in the sand. Everybody's got their own issue. And we have two words I have asked our holy leaders in Delhi to ban for 4 years. Sanskriti and Parampara. I want them out. I can't bear them anymore. Because what's your Sanskriti, what's your Parampara is not his or hers or mine. I mean, we can't agree to this. So stop hitting me with that. Let's talk about the real elephant in the room, and that is psychophancy, India's biggest problem. Because that's what the issue is here, rather than freedom of speech. Looking at the example that everybody knows, Kunal Kabra, who's lost 40 kilos, thank God, so now could be model of the year, but instead has to fight a case from Pondicherry in Mumbai. He says whatever he has to say. I don't know why our politicians have this sense of fragility, that everything that is said to or against them is, it's going to destroy them. Which is just a comedian trying to do his thing at the end of the day. Not to support it because his singing is awful. I have to tell you, can't bear it. But please talk to him about that. They should fine him for that. If you ask me, the moment I go. So, sorry? Yeah, he'll take lessons. But, I mean, just look at those guys who misbehave every time it happens. Are those the guys you'd like to take home to meet your family or date your sister or hang out with or start a company with or start up with or just, spend your evenings with or, I mean, honestly, that's the shame. The behavior where they just have this righteousness and they come and hit people and beat things and break things. I mean, bashing the habitat centers like, me destroying Wankhede Stadium because Rohit Sharma made a duck. It makes no sense. It's just a pointless exercise. So it's the psychophancy which we have to stop. Starting with this VIP culture, I would like to now go to my pet peeve. It starts from there. In India, we always have this over-respect for everybody. 10,000 cars when a great man passes. Then 10 million people have to react for the great man's fragile ego. Why? I could go on forever, but I'm thinking our politicians should be given a cycle. There's a public service, as a mode of transport, taught karate, and given a baton, and maybe an Alsatian. You don't need more than that. And a season ticket to Wankhede Stadium. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Aarti, can we have your perspective?
So I agree with everything that's been said, but I want to come at it from a slightly different perspective, which is focused not on censorship, but on social media, because that's something that really has changed in our lives in the last 10 years. And that's a big part of today's discussion. And we often look at it as a sort of benign source of entertainment, a source of news, a source of communication. But really, it's a lot more than that. And in today's landscape, we are talking about a monopoly of 2 or 3 companies that control the way we think, the way we talk to each other, the way we process news internationally. This is not just in one country or the other. We are talking about 2 or 3 people who have this power over the world's population. And that is a terrifying reality. And now, to break it down from there, we've now focused on the rights of speakers, which I completely agree with. Justice Patel did mention that words are dangerous to those in power. But very often, words are also dangerous to those who are vulnerable. And that, I think, is an aspect of regulation, not censorship, of the internet and social media that is underexplored, and there are no easy answers. I don't know how many of you have watched the recent show on Netflix called Adolescence, which sort of skims the surface, because it talks about the manosphere, the incel movement, young boys, between the age of 10 and 15, in their bedrooms doing what parents are thinking is simply innocuous surfing, but are exposed to some of the most vile aspects of the internet. And there's no easy solution to shut it down. You don't know what's going on in their minds. You don't know the poison that's trickling through. Young boys who otherwise superficially seem nice and sweet and just like the boy next door. So when it comes to social media and regulation, not censorship, there is a global problem that's staring us in the face. It starts from the control that 2 or 3 people exercise, an unaccountable form of control where they dictate the laws, where they are able to set the terms even in powerful countries as to the extent to which they are regulated and the extent to which they are made responsible and accountable for the harms, whether it's a genocide, whether it's radicalizing the youth, whether it's making women more vulnerable, not just to in the online space, but even offline. So I just think that I'd like to throw that out there.
Kishu, your take?
Yes. Mr. Jagdani, moderator, sir, that mic glitch has nothing to do with Government Law College. We are in a college which boasts of Lokmanya Tilak and Ambedkar. So to all my panelists, let your minds be fair and your speech be free, because today is the day we can actually say what we want in this hallowed academic forum. Now, so we started at the beginning and we had print media and then we had TV media. And there was always a way to control it. It's easy to control. Print media is expensive to reach out to the last person. TV media is also expensive, but probably less, but it can be controlled. So there are media houses that own it. And then about 10 years back came social media. Completely uncontrollable. Every person became a journalist from his home. And who got scared? The politicians. Now when I'm talking about the politicians, I'm not necessarily talking about the state. I want to make a distinction between the state and the politicians. Now we have to figure out a way how to regulate and control social media, because we cannot have anybody saying anything about anybody. Let me put a clarification here, and probably the other panelists will follow that. If there is misinformation, if there is somebody impacting the security of the state, the sovereignty and integrity of India, I don't think anybody here would disagree that that speech must be curtailed. But it is a speech that's merely offending somebody because he's wearing a suit. Or
not. Or not.
Or not. Or not, yes. Now, or the fact that, as Ashwin said, there was a time we could ridicule our gods. Today we cannot ridicule anybody. We cannot ridicule anybody. Now, Mr. Jagdani spoke about Kunal Kamra, you spoke about Randeria. Now, suddenly, the entire state machinery has got into motion, into breaking the studio, trying to arrest him. In fact, today morning I read the Legislative Council actually is going to move a privilege motion against Kamra. Please, ladies and gentlemen, the privilege of Parliament is to permit them to say what they want in Parliament freely. The parliamentary privilege is not there to take a citizen who says something and punish him. But suddenly the whole machinery has got into motion because Kunal Kamra sang a song.
Badly.
My great umbrage comes from the fact here that last year, I'm speaking from heart and please forgive me because this is where I feel, 2,600 farmers died of suicide in Maharashtra. We started this program, 3 hours later we ended, one farmer will have committed suicide. I don't see any parliamentary proceeding to look out for that. But the entire state machinery is out there to punish a person because he said something that offended someone. He did not damage the sovereignty of our country, the security of the state. There was no public order disruption either. And please do not tell me public order disruption happens suo motu. You read Asghar Ali Engineer, riots are created, riots are manufactured. Protests don't happen because people get excited. Protests are created. So in this context, I really, while this panel is going to discuss this, I also want us to realize that are we fueling this debate even more by giving credence to the people who get offended? So are we following this on social media to a greater extent, and that is why this is giving the opportunity to the politicians to actually get their moment in the sun? And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kishu. I'll start off with my first question to Justice Patel. You pretty much covered a part of what I'm going to ask you in your opening remarks, but it's this. We have free speech guaranteed to us by Article 19(1)(a) and subject to reasonable restrictions which can be imposed on the free speech by proper legislation. But then on the other hand, you have this impact of the social media which is so invasive, which cuts through all barriers and can in a way, because of sometimes reckless content can completely demolish the whole concept of free speech as we know it. Now, my question to you is that would you look upon free speech as a means to an end, or would you look upon it as an end in itself?
Well, it's not an end in itself. It is clearly a means to an end. And when we are talking about this word balance is apt to be misconstrued. The point that Aarti makes is serious. There can and should be regulations. I mean, let's take the straightforward example. Child pornography on the internet.
Yeah.
There is a proliferation. We see the harm, we see the damage. It's clearly something that falls within the parameters of 19.2, but it demands a law, not executive action, but it demands a law that must be constitutionally valid and therefore must take into account all those parameters and must fit the constraints of Article 19.2. The point I'm making is that you can't proactively in future design laws that will on their own have the effect of criminalizing the expression of an idea or a thought or the use of a certain word. This idea that all social media expression, because it is social media expression, is corrosive and is damaging people has two fundamentally flawed premises. The first is that this is obviously not true. There's not even anecdotal evidence of this. And secondly, that it assumes that your population is so infantile that it cannot distinguish the good from the bad and can't make up its own mind. We need a broader base to this. And you know, it's very curious that we're seeing this today because a few hours ago, Justice Oak in the Supreme Court in Imran Pratapgarhi's case has come out very strongly in favor of this. And one of the things he says is this: 75 years into our republic, we cannot be seen to be so shaky in our fundamentals that the mere recital of a poem, or for that matter, any form of art or entertainment such as stand-up comedy, can be alleged to lead to animosity or hatred amongst different communities. It's not always hate speech. It's not always damaging. If you have to have control over it, that control has to be very tightly circumscribed. Putting it differently, my greater fear is of an expansive, woolly, nebulous restriction rather than the broadest possible freedom. The freedoms must be broad, the restrictions have to be extremely, extremely narrow. It's vital. This is not, we're sacrificing this at our peril, at the peril of our future, at the peril of our democracy, at the peril of civilization. These rights are not conferred. We've got these rights as fundamental rights, but they have been achieved after a great deal of struggle and a great deal of loss of life and much blood. We sacrifice these at our peril. My view is, let the curtailments be as narrow and as specific as you can possibly make them, but do not curtail my right to read, think, speak, see, or listen.
Thank you. Hi, my next question is to you, and it's a slightly loaded question in as much as, we've seen what's happening in the Middle East. I mean, it's unprecedented, the nature of violence and civilians on both sides, Israelis and the Palestinians, being brutally assaulted and brutally murdered or killed. Right? Now, there are now, as we see, we've read about protests in Israel and voices of dissent which are being expressed there. Now, Israel is a very democratic society. It always has been. How are these voices of dissent being dealt with in a situation that prevails in Israel right now? And having asked this, I'm going to add one more aspect to it. You imagine that for the duration of this panel discussion, you're the Prime Minister of Israel. I want your views. No. How would you deal with this situation? All right. Anyway, then take the first part, and I'd like your views as to how you would deal with this situation.
Well, first of all, many people see the Prime Minister is that he is the one behind the attempts to weaken our democracy. So that's why this is such a grave worrying situation. When I look at the media, it's the entire media, it's social media, it's television, etc. And we didn't speak about incitement. We didn't speak about incitement coming from the followers of the government or those who act on their behalf. And I don't agree with calling those voices voices of dissent. These are voices, legitimate voices that are expressing the objection of what might result in weakening our democracy. Whether it's the gatekeepers, whether it's now the attempt to, or actually the decision to fire the Attorney General. And the Supreme Court might block this attempt. And the question will be if the government will actually abide by a judgment of our Supreme Court. This is a very crucial weeks in our modern history, which, and that's the reason why so many people are going out. So luckily still people can go and demonstrate, and it's not voices of dissent, but voices of those who oppose such measures. And the question is, who is going to win? Because if the government will not abide by judgments of the Supreme Court, I would like to be on the second panel next year, but I would like to be part of the audience.
Will you get into trouble for saying this?
No. So far, no. But again, I just gave an example of a professor of university. For example, we have here two professors. Imagine that they voice their opinion on it. It's not an assignment, it's a legitimate opinion. This is our democracy. We share those values. And then suddenly you will be punished by not receiving an award that actually you were chosen to receive because the government didn't like the fact that you are opposing the policies of the actions of this government. And again, there are very good reason why people are going out to the streets and they're being roughed by the police, but they know that our democracy is stake. And when I talk about democracy, it's freedom of speech, freedom of protest, freedom to say whatever you want, as long as it is not an incitement, as long as it's not a hate language. But therefore, right now, we're in a crossroads.
Thank you. Aarti, I turn to you. Now, can you give us a brief synopsis of the ratio in this Kamal Kamra's case, where you were involved when you appeared before Justice Patel? You can be critical, though. He won't mind it. That's free speech.
No contempt of court.
Now, particularly with
I won't
reference,
mind it. It has nothing to do with you.
Now, particularly with reference to, whilst you're doing the ratio, particularly with reference to those rules, the rules which were struck down. So just give us a broad idea as to how the courts have approached this.
Sure, I'll try and do that without getting too technical. So broadly, this was a challenge to an amendment to the IT rules. What the rule did was it
Pertaining to the business of government.
Sorry, fake, false, or misleading in respect of the business of the central government. So now there were various problematic elements to it. The first is that this FCU was the sole arbiter as to whether it's fake, false, or misleading.
Sorry, is she audible? Continue.
A little closer?
Yeah.
Okay. The first issue was the fact that the fact check unit is the sole arbiter as to what is fake, false, and misleading. The second issue was the fact that the fact check unit itself is a body constituted of people that were to be appointed by the central government, presumably. The third issue is the loaded nature of the terms fake, false, and misleading, which were ripe for challenge because they were entirely vague. So that made it ripe for challenge because they were entirely vague. A huge part of the discussion and the judgments themselves were: what is truth, what is falsity, can there be a final take on it, and can this determine whether certain information can stay up on the internet or not. Then there were the typical constitutionality challenges. It was contrary to Article 19(1)(a). It was a restriction of free speech not contemplated under Article 19(2). It was a restriction on the freedom of trade and profession under 19(1)(g), not contemplated, a restriction not contemplated under 19(6). It was arbitrary, contrary to Article 14, and also not contemplated under the Parent Act. So, in this, there were three opinions because the initial bench hearing it had to deliver a split verdict to a third judge. And the two opinions that finally struck down the rules, struck it down on every single count. Now, if you were to step back from the judgment itself to see what is at stake, the way the rule would have operated is that any information on the internet, and this is not just a random person's Twitter post or Facebook post, but even data that was done by an independent agency, a news report that was put up of COVID deaths, the death of manual scavengers, disputing government figures would be impossible because the government would have the sole say on what is true or false about its own business. And if there is one entity that is most unfit for this exercise, it is the government itself. And I think what was interesting is to see the government's attempt at defending the rule, because how it did so is that it said that your right to information is a facet of your freedom of speech and expression. And by taking down what was fake, false, or misleading, we are in fact championing your right to freedom of speech and expression. I'm sure that we'll see versions of this argument deployed in various other paternalistic interventions the government is going to make when it comes to our free speech. But I think that was one of the most interesting aspects of how our right to information was entirely contorted in an attempt to defend this rule. But it was eventually struck down and it's now pending before the Supreme Court.
Thanks, Aarti. Kishu, I'd like to ask you a direct question. Our social media platforms, the various ones that we have, are they champions of free speech or are they a threat to free speech? What's your take on that?
Check.
It's like my wedding.
Okay, are social media platforms champions or are they a threat?
Yes.
Depends who owns the platform. So there are these two brothers in arms. They're about 12,000 miles away. Any guesses? One is called Donald Trump and one is called Elon Musk. Now, here you got a situation wherein Elon Musk has probably got the most powerful social media platform globally. And at the same time, he is the advisor to the White House. So he's specially protected because he doesn't have to disclose any conflicts of interest. And also, he's one of the top business houses in the United States. So that is a Molotov cocktail of destruction of democracy. So if the social media platforms can be a threat to democracy, that would be it. Because each and every narrative of Donald Trump is actually being promoted by X. And whenever Elon Musk chooses, he can actually say that such and such person needs to be removed because he's committed a crime. An organization called USA, which has been going on for the last several, maybe decades, is now being described as a criminal entity. So, you see, a social media platform used wrongly or in the wrong hands. Now, even other than social media platform, any media platform, because I think in India also we have large business houses owning media and closely connected to the government. See, so if you were to take just away from social media and keep the media, I think a social media platform in the wrong hands can completely destroy democracy. Because as Aarti said earlier, the social media can get into your hearts and minds with zero censorship. It can get into the homes of little children, into the most vulnerable section without any control. So I think the jury would be divided on that. In fact, a social media platform in the wrong hand could completely destroy democracy. Completely. I think if I can add something more to that.
Yes, please.
Yes. Maybe I'll come back to.
All right.
I'll come back to Elon Musk later.
Ashwin, you know, as a prolific writer and as an author, you have integrated historical research with mythology. Now, you know, it's in the past also, we have banned, in the government of India has banned several books for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the bans have been lifted, but otherwise it's not. Now, I'm asking you, when you embark upon writing a book, do you draw the line? Because those books which have been banned are those which have stepped on religious toes, sensitivities, etc. Now, when you write a book, are you conscious of that? Do you draw the line for yourself and say, well, I'll go this far and no further for fear that it may affect or step on some sentiments?
So I can't remember who it was who said that there is only one thing more dangerous than censorship, and that is the illusion of free speech. So in that sense, sometimes with what I do, I am living under the illusion of free speech. When the reason that I think maybe to some extent my books in the last 17 or 18 years have remained quote unquote acceptable is because of the fact that I am not attempting to sensationalize. The vast majority of books that end up causing controversies are the ones where, and I can tell you this, that this 9 out of 10 times true, are the instances where the author wants to create a controversy. Because it's directly correlated to sales. So at least my approach, given the fact that I'm dealing with very, very sensitive topics, my first approach, and by the way, you know, given the fact that I'm dealing with topics which are in the realm of mythology, philosophy, history, and everything is nowadays loaded and political. My approach is that, look, if I'm writing something called the Krishna Key, please treat it entirely as fiction. It may be based on some elements of fact, but when you read the story, read it entirely as fiction. When reporters ask me, what is your qualification to write this? I say, well, my growing up years, my mother always said that I was a bloody good liar. And so we as fiction writers have to tell lies. So you're not attempting to instill an element of saying, hey, listen, this is factual. I'm a storyteller, I'm doing my job of storytelling. The moment you try and say, this is real, so therefore you should accept this as fact, I think you're treading on very, very dodgy territory. Number two, you owe it to your reader that if you are going to be dealing with those sort of topics, then you spend a substantive amount of time doing the research. Typically, a book in my Bharat series will take me 2 years to write, of which 18 months is typically in exploring the subject. So I think that's very important because, you know, as they say, you know, it's wonderful in case you can tell a good lie, but if you want to tell a good lie, then tell it as close to the truth as you possibly can. So that research is what enables you to do that. The third is, I would say, that approach the subject with a sense of respect, because that will shine through in your writing. Now, honestly speaking, if there is someone out to get you, I don't think any of this is going to matter. If the system wants to get you, it will get you, irrespective of whether you've followed these rules or not. And that's the reason why I always say that freedom of expression, beyond everything else, has to also include the freedom to offend. And unfortunately, that is something which we have, I can't think of another country, forget about India, I can't think of any country which now actually lives by that principle. There was one time when France used to live by that principle. Charlie Hebdo changed everything. So in that sense, there is not a single land in the world where I think that we have true freedom of expression.
Thanks, Ashwin. Cyrus, you know, everyone knows that you're a laugh-a-minute stand-up comedian. But an overzealous government can sort of try and stifle that laugh. And not only that, it would then stifle our happiness as well. Now, does that weigh with you when you mock some political leaders or make fun of them or do a parody? And of course, you know, now the way things, especially when you see this Kamal Kamra, that's it, Kunal Kamra, in this episode, FIR against him, it's possible that some people of your ilk will probably end up in the cooler. And then perhaps you could form a comedy club there and entertain the inmates. And so, now, does this thought...
Looks like I'll have a better career. No.
No, I'm just saying that does this thought ever bog you down, or does it play with you when you do your mocks?
So when we were doing the show and writing and stuff like that, we had to do a little self-censorship because we live in a real world. In an ideal world, I would agree with Ashwin completely. Fantastic, just say what you want, and they're all mature individuals who, you know, laugh, have a drink later, and everybody's fine. But that doesn't really happen. So we try and self-censor how far can we go. Yeah, I think it's not get too personal when you're doing satire, especially political satire. Unfortunately, it's difficult because at some point, you know, the person itself and the issue is the same thing. To defend Kunal Kamra, I mean, honestly, he's a comedian doing his thing. I just don't understand. This is the behemoth that a deputy runner-up chief minister is, because there are two. I mean, there are two. I mean, it's confusing. Maharashtra politics is most confusing. There's 17 parties involved. The 8 on this side, 9 on that side. 2 defecting to that defects into this becomes the sub-party of that sub-party of this. Then this guy leaves this party and goes to the parent party and ignores the sub-party that was created for this party. So that's Maharashtra politics. I say, if you see something like this, it's a franchising sport. So if you say something like this, I think it's okay. They don't get too upset. But if you start getting a little more personal and using words which I can't pronounce and rhyme with father and mother and other, the 3 best words in India, then I guess, you know, somebody got upset. But again, for me, the biggest problem is, you know, the reality that we live in. If you want to work and whatever, you've got to just figure out. Like Solzhenitsyn, I dare say, you want to compare, and people like that who write between the lines and try to send you messages and try to get their point across, because that's the reality of living. So these guys are bold, stronger, they have much bigger gonads, if I may use the expression, than my generation, and they're putting it out there. And it seems to upset everybody, and something to do with masculinity missing from urban India, I feel, honestly, because I don't know why they get upset, really. It's just, yeah, all femininity, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anyone, I'm center, so politics is all over the place now. So it's really, you got to just self-censor yourself if you want to work, or if you decide, look, I'm going to, die by the sword here on my words, then be prepared for what is to come. That's the reality. What is correct, what is right and wrong. I think Justice Patel has put everything in perspective. It's tough to get beyond what he said. He's basically explained the whole thing. And we all know, all these people here are civilized, mature people who understand that this is comedy and nothing more. But then outside this world there exist other people, and sadly some of them rule the country, and there's not much we can do about it right now. Because I live in Malba Hill next to the Dungarwadi, can't wait to die. Back to Elon Musk.
I'll tell you why Cyrus is never in threat, and it's going to take him many years to get to the Dungarwadi. Nobody takes him seriously. He's Parsi. Come along, we have the best sense of humor.
Oh, that's a communal remark.
That's the whole breed is dying.
Gautam, coming back to you. Now you've seen the backlash of violence, but that even extends now to the government recommending filing of FIRs in situations like this. Even for defamation, an FIR is filed, it's a non-cognizable offense. Don't see how an FIR can actually be filed in such a case. Now, do you have any suggestions as to what can be done to rectify this, or any remedies? Because, if the government doesn't file it, then people, leaders who are aligned to that particular government, virtually misuse the government machinery, or misuse the criminal machinery, and take their revenge on these people. What is your recommendation? And apart from that, what would you also tell the citizens as to what should be done in situations like this? Shouldn't there be some sort of a protest which therefore protects democracy in the larger context?
Okay, so that's a bundle of questions. Look, let's be clear about what is happening just now when governments say we will file FIRs and we will prosecute, etc., etc. It is, let's call it for what it is. It is pure and simple bullying. There is no other word for it. And I'll tell you why it is bullying, because the same expression, the exact same expression, in the same context, has been used before by Uddhav Thackeray, is used today by Uddhav Thackeray, and nobody has, as he says, the gonads to file FIRs against Uddhav Thackeray. Why not? Or Ajit Pawar, who have said exactly the same thing. They may say it, but who are you, a comedian, and how can you be doing this? Oh, I am offended and I am disrespected. Respect has got to be earned. Respect is earned by what you do and how you go about it. It is not earned by filing FIRs, and no amount of FIRs are going to earn you the respect that you want. It's not going to happen. The problem really, and this is, the idea is not just Mr. Kamra, who's one example, but it's a message to citizens, comedians, stand-up comics, who do this for a living. But don't you dare try it, because we'll come after you and we'll throw the weight of the state machinery behind you. It's at this point, I think, rather than framing new laws which are complicated enough as it is that courts must take a simple stand. Start chucking these things out, quashing these FIRs, one after the other, after the other, after the other, and do it consistently. When the Supreme Court sends out a signal, other high courts and other courts must follow, and they must, see, courts have to see themselves in a different light. They have to say this to governments, that between you and the citizens, there stand we. You have to get past us, the courts, the guardians on the ramparts, before we'll allow you to take these citizens apart. Look, my view, simply stated. Ashwin said it. You have the right to free speech, you have the right to offend, but you have the duty not to be offended. Those two go hand in hand.
That's well said.
You have a right, and there are unfortunately these duties are being misinterpreted because they're saying you have a duty not to offend. No. You have a duty not to be offended. It's qualitatively a different thing. Some years ago, I don't know how many of you remember this, a professor of the South Bombay College petitioned the High Court saying, we must have censorship of television content. It's harmful to children. I was a lawyer back then, and I wanted to go up to her and say, Madam, use the remote's off button. Switch it off. That's your control. You don't want judgments from high courts and you don't want laws. Exercise discretion. And we trust you to exercise your discretion. This is something that can be done. I'm actually a little worried about Kishu's construct. I understand where he's going with this. But I don't know whether this is tending to a situation where social media is controlled by government, which is conceivably even more dangerous. Because we can take about a corporation, or you can choose not to have a Twitter account. The other alternative might be even deadlier to democracies. That's a debate that's something worth thinking about. Thank you.
Thanks. Han, we believe that you have signed a representation along with some other senior diplomats and ambassadors, in which to raise their voices regarding the Israeli crisis. Would you confirm this, and would you then tell us something more elaborate on this?
Yeah, first of all, of course I confirm. A group of retired senior diplomats, we decided to send a letter to Jewish communities around the world, Jewish organizations. First of all, to understand that there are many voices in Israel. And I won't call them voices of dissent, but voices, legitimate voices, opposing some of the government's policies, actions, etc. So it is important for Jewish communities to realize that this is what's happening, that there's a debate in Israel that is going on, a fierce debate, and that they should also think whether they can put pressure on the government, because after all, many leaders of the Jewish community are involved to a certain level with Israeli politics, which is acceptable to us as long as they're doing it in a proper manner. But we feel that today, because of our shared values, and we're talking about values of democracy, freedom of speech, weakening the judiciary, controlling the gatekeepers, we would like them to be aware and let them decide how they can take action. And they can, if they are contributing generously to educational institutions in Israel, to hospitals, to so many initiatives. Yes, it is very much appreciated, but at the same time, I think, or we believe, that it gives them the right or justification to raise a voice of concern. That was the purpose of this letter, and all of us work very closely with Jewish communities in different parts of the world. I was ambassador in Canada, I was ambassador in the Netherlands. Ethiopia was a different type of mission. But yes, each and every one of us is very close to friends, to organizations, and we feel that this is the time that shared values are in danger: freedom of speech, democracy, freedom of our judiciary. Our judiciary today is under threat. Why? And this is, by the way, the judiciary in Israel we were so proud of. Harish is familiar with our system. And what they just passed a legislation in Parliament that from now on, our judges will be appointed by a political committee for the first time. And obviously the purpose is to weaken, to control, because God forbid the Supreme Court can block a legislation which on the face of it looks totally unacceptable, or action they don't want to give or to enable the Supreme Court and the judiciary to be able to intervene in decisions that the government allows. So this is part of freedom of speech that is very much right now being debated in Israel.
Thank you. That's very, very proud. Aarti, would you tell us something briefly about the broadcast bill? Just very briefly, and what is your appraisal of it?
So the broadcast bill is in an amorphous form. There was a first draft that was released to the public. Then it was withdrawn after severe criticism. There's a second draft that's been circulated to limited stakeholders that was then leaked to the public, which is the one that I've read. And that also didn't seem to gain much traction. And then it surfaced very recently following Ranveer Alabadia's bail hearing before the Supreme Court, where in the course of the hearing, the bench remarked that, look, there is a need to regulate what is put up on the internet. The Attorney General and the Solicitor General were also called upon, and the bench said that we must definitely look into and must frame regulations to police what is said on the internet so that these kind of events can't come to pass. So that was in itself a very problematic development, because you can't have a court that is meant to protect rights actively pushing for legislation and in fact attempting to legislate itself, which it has done in the past. But if you going back to the broadcast bill in itself, let me describe how it would operate in its current avatar, the draft that was circulated. It would require someone like Cyrus, who has a social media handle and a large following, to have an elaborate apparatus around him. He would have to have an internal content evaluation committee. He would have to have his content vetted by an external panel of diverse people. So it should be gender diverse, caste diverse, catering to various social sensibilities. Then there would be a 3-tier panel, one that further evaluates content, including an autonomous industry body and a government constituted body. So all of this is to operate as a prior restraint on speech. It makes being a participant on the internet so impossibly onerous that it automatically has a chilling effect, which is really what possibly any government looking to regulate speech, looking to make it difficult for people to participate in discussions meaningfully, to challenge government meaningfully. The easiest way is to drown them in bureaucracy, to require them to register, which it also contemplates, to get a license. It also contemplated the government inspecting and seizing devices if they apprehended that the act was being violated. So you're talking about somebody coming in, looking at your phone that you're shooting your home video on, and taking it away. The registration requirements were for people beyond a certain following, and it's extraterritorial in its effect. So from Taylor Swift to Cyrus Brocha to somebody producing home cooking videos, all of them would require registration. So I mean, it's a comedy of errors, but it's a dangerous one, and one that we can only hope doesn't come to pass, or if it does, is successfully challenged in court.
Thank you, that was very useful. No. Kishu, do your take on Elon Musk, but don't you think it's absolutely, in that sense, a threat to democracy, where platforms like these are aligned to the government in power at the moment? So, and we've seen this. I mean, it's not alien to us. We've seen this happening in this country as well.
Yes, I mean, totally. In fact, I think there is a much more dangerous connotation. You know what Mr. Patel was saying. Mr. Patel said that we have a duty not to be offended. See, but today what we are doing, we are actually finding reasons to be offended.
Correct.
See, we have become a woke
Well
society.
said.
That's
So
the problem.
who's going to say what, and let me be offended so I get an opportunity to,
Correct.
be out there.
Correct.
So this, what we call the social Marxists, well, the woke generation. I think everybody on this panel is very asleep in the context. We are definitely not woke, but the generation I'm talking about. Let me point out how the government in the US can actually impact social media in India. I reach out to the young people in this audience. How many of you have heard of Grok? GRO.
Yeah.
There you are. Do you like Grok? Yes. You know why they like Grok? Because Grok has been created with a particular purpose. It is like ChatGPT or like Gemini or any other AI platform. It is designed to be rogue. It is an AI assistant with a twist of humor and a dash of rebellion. Yes, that's the object of creating Grok. It says it will help you with your answer while keeping you entertained. Now, those of you who have used Grok, have you spoken to Grok in Hindi? Regional language? How many have spoken in regional language? Okay. How's the language, by the way? Is it interesting? Yes. MC, DC, everything. Answer is it is. Grok is actually using the most abusive language ever. He doesn't know.
He has the right to express himself.
So, Grok is using the most abusive language. Further, when you ask questions of Grok, Grok is being brutally honest. At this point in time, Grok is, I won't say abusive, but very critical of our Prime Minister. Grok is talking about communalism in India. Grok is talking about, you name it, Tipu Sultan to Savarkar to RSS to British colonialism, everything, and believe me, ladies and gentlemen, not in a nice manner. This has been going on for the last 1 month. And yesterday, or today, 28th of March was yesterday, the Ministry of NEITY has made a statement. There is a new AI chatbot. There has been some controversial statements made, including obscene language. We have to examine the issue. So far, we have not launched any formal investigation or issued a notice. Grok is the product of the platform called X. So the truth is out there. So you're having a social media platform controlled in the United States that is outed. So if any other platform, and I want to tell you, Ranveer Alavadia, what he said, Kunal Kamra, what he said, is value X. You multiply that by 10x, and that's what Grok can do. But we are not going to take any action against Grok. Because Grok is connected to a man who's going to impose tariffs on us. So this control of social media is no longer at a national level. It is affecting us at an international level. And mind you, Elon Musk has filed a suit against the Indian government.
Yeah.
The Indian government has asked him to take down certain posts, including posts that are connected to the scenes at the platform at the Delhi railway station. He refused to take them down. His logic is that there is no judicial oversight when you're taking them down because there is now a platform.
This is in the Karnataka High Court,
The
right?
Sayog, yes.
He's filed this action in the Karnataka High Court.
Exactly, in the Karnataka High Court. And the platform Sayog doesn't have judicial oversight, and his logic is that any central government employee can ask you to take down certain content, and because it doesn't have judicial oversight, it is not constitutional and not going to listen. Now, what are we going to do? Ban X like we did TikTok? Are we going to ban the X of Musk who's bringing in Tesla and Starlink? So do you realize this this social media control is little beyond us at this moment. It is crossing boundaries. It is going to create a very, very difficult task of, are we going to tell X on what are your search engines going to use, what is the data you're going to look at? I don't think, and that is why control of social media is subtly happening, and it had to happen. You see, when we talk of politicians, please note we're not talking of any political party. Okay, I mean what Cyrus was telling you when I told him it's like IPL, you know, Rohit Sharma plays for Bombay, then he plays for Delhi. So they keep moving. So the politician as an entire group, regardless which party you belong to, definitely want control. The state will want control. I could just read out some instances to you here. Sumit Thakkar, he was arrested because he said that Uddhav Thackeray, he compared him to Aurangzeb and he called Aditya Thackeray a penguin.
Yeah.
Navneet Rana read the Hanuman Chalisa outside Uddhav Thackeray's house, he was arrested. Ravi Srinivasan said Karti Chidambaram makes more money than Robert Vadra, he was arrested. One professor at Jadavpur University forwarded a cartoon of Mamta, he was arrested. So you can see it is across political boundaries. There is no that this party or the other party. Tejinder Bagga, BJP leader, criticized Arvind Kejriwal, the Punjab police hounded. Samaku Shankar, he criticized the Congress DMK, yes. And they put filth and excreta into his house where his mother was living. So do you realize this? You know, when you say bullying, it's more than bullying. It is just the entire machinery goes after a specific person. Go ahead, put filth and excreta outside Elon Musk's house. Can you do that? No, you cannot. So when Mr. Patel says this is bullying, we are catching the people we can. And we are punishing the people we can. And there are certain people we cannot punish. We are not. And that is why I think this...
That's the definition of bullying.
Sorry, exactly.
That's the definition of bullying.
So
Pick someone your side.
control of social media is going to be a very challenging task as we go down the years. It's going to have strategic implications, it's going to have political implications, it's going to have economic implications.
Thanks. Ashwin, have you ever been trolled?
Where's that coming from?
I'm asking you. How close are you to being trolled in some of the books that you have?
I knew that handle sounded like you. No, I have been. And that's, I guess, that goes with the territory. I mean, but partly, I think all those who are in creative spaces are very used to having people throw rocks at them, frankly. I think to a certain extent, you know, I still remember when my first novel had come out, I think 2007 or 2008, and the very first review that came out, the reviewer wrote that Ashwin's book could have been a little shorter. Maybe he should have stopped writing on page 10. And I was very angry that how can this person write something like this? It's required 2 years of effort. But then eventually you develop a thick skin and you say, no, this is the creative space and everyone has a right to be able to express their view. And as long as that right to express a view is not inciting violence, it is not hateful against a particular race, creed, religion, or it is not in some way harmful to the integrity or unity of the country, by all means. So I always like to joke that, you know, the relationship between the author and the critic is the relationship between the lamppost and the dog. So the lamppost knows what's coming, and you're prepared for that. There's no way that you can be in the creative space and not expect to be trolled, not expect to be criticized, not expect to have your work trashed. It goes with the territory. And in some ways I feel that maybe because of the fact that we happen to be in that space, we tend to, over a period of time, develop a thicker skin.
Thanks.
Simon? Would you be concerned if you were not trolled?
Yeah, in fact, honestly, that's a very, very good question, because I think to a certain extent, you know, in the space, particularly in the creative space, what you don't want is a situation where I don't mind being loved, obviously I would love to be loved. And that's wonderful. Thank you, Simon. And I also don't mind having my work hated. What you don't want is being ignored. So that is the most difficult part of it, I guess.
Funny, Cyrus, what's your take on this Kamal Kamraz?
Well, I feel really bad, sir, because he's front page of everything on the internet, and his first name is so common, but you are like my father, who's no more, and I have no respect for this generation, and just call him anything you want, which I love and admire.
But Cyrus, we are in BJP time, so Kamal is important.
I already mentioned that. I get one point for that. I mentioned that. Yeah. But he said it, so they can attack him.
But my surname is Sanghi.
There you go. Sanghi. Yeah, so with the Kunal Kama thing, what happened to parliamentary debate? And, back in the day when we had some politicians who were very good with their speech and debate, it was fun to listen to them. I remember Feroz Gandhi, Atul Bihari Vajpayee's time, I think they had some fabulous debates. We still have a few speakers who are interesting. So my point is, why can't they just have a rebuttal? Why can't they just talk back? Why can't they make their own video, make their own song? Those 17 lovely looking men who went to Habitat, why can't they start a rock band and sing a beautiful Marathi song, and they can use every phrase they want, from Tuji Aichi, let's go, to no, it's a common phrase we use for playing cricket.
It's only Marathi,
You're a writer and artist, I'm a working class entertainer, I play cricket. So it just boggles the mind why this violence is disallowed, and I think both the gentlemen, Justice Patel has mentioned it, and our erudite professors mentioned it again. At the end of the day, that this bullying just carries on. It's not even you like Kunal Kamra, everybody's side. It goes back to Salman Rushdie almost, where people say, I thought that I want to defend him or like his writing or whatever. That's really not the point. The point is that you cannot just get up and use the machinery like it's your personal, bunch of watchmen. The police go running there, the BMC is there in 15 minutes. If I stab my wife, they'll take 3 days to find the body. Trust me, nobody will turn up. It'll go on for days. So it's just clear, I don't want to use the word fascism, but it's a little scary when the machinery is just used for personal vendettas like that. And that, I don't know what to do. I've given up. I just hide inside my home somewhere in Walkeswar, Malpar Hill, and hope that Justice Patel will return.
Well, now, what I'd like to do is throw the discussion open to the floor. Now, if anyone has a question to ask, raise your hand. The mic will come to you. Just announce your name and also mention the panelist that you want should answer your question. So I'm throwing it open to the floor now.
You need a mic. You need a mic.
You need a mic, please.
Just text us.
Don't you think that money, with huge amounts of money that is there, that has a great deal to say with all these things that are happening? It's like giving money to make them say certain things, give them money to do something. And money is running the roost. I think that's an important aspect of it, which I thought you might like.
Who would you like to answer that question? And also, could you just stand up and identify yourself?
I'm Professor Chugani. I've been here
Yes.
as long as
Professor, can we see the Aadhaar card? Just kidding.
All right, so who is that question for?
I would like the judge to say something.
I don't think money has anything to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. It is about power structures. It's only about every one of the examples that Kishu read us. It's not about, madam, it's not about money, it's about power structures. If it was only about money, it was easy to deal with it. Take it away, take the money away, problem solved. Offering more money at the problem solved. It's not. These are power structures. Why does Aditya Thackeray want to ban Rohinton Mistri's Such a Long Journey from here? It's a power play. There's nothing to do with money. There's no money involved in any of these things. Kunal Kamra is not attacked today because there's money involved behind this. There's no money behind this. No chance. There's nothing whatsoever to do that. But I do want to say something that's extremely, let's not trivialize this. Behind, and I've maintained this from the beginning, I said this yesterday, throughout history, in literature, there's always been the court jester, the fool. Whether you look at King Lear, stories of Akbar and Birbal, the one man who could really speak truth to power and say things that nobody else dared because he was a fool. And there's a Latin maxim for this, because there's a Latin maxim for everything, as students of Government Law College will tell you. And that Latin maxim translates to this, that in jest there is truth. Comedians are not unnecessary fripperies. They are exaggerators, like cartoonists are exaggerators. But they hold up a mirror to society and society's elements, like politicians, to show us our vulnerabilities, our frailties. Listen to them seriously. They're saying something important. They matter. In what Aarti said about the broadcast bill, it should really scare you. And I'm saying this also because we have the extraordinary privilege to have this given here. Hannah Arendt, a long time ago, in the context of the Holocaust and what was happening in Germany, wrote about the banality of evil. These steps look ordinary, they look commonplace. They are the personification of evil. Adolf Eichmann said this because how do you do the most unspeakable thing? Pack Jews into cattle wagons on railway tracks and send them off to extermination camps. How do you make this palatable? He was a civil servant and he cottoned onto this idea. And it's really frightening that if you make it commonplace, if you make it routine, if you make it everyday, if you make it to a situation is like this, so what, it cannot happen to me, then you stop caring. And that's the danger of acts like this. I've got nothing to hide. How am I bothered about the broadcast bill? Is the worst possible thing that you could say about a bill that is designed to turn what you read, think, listen into mindless pap. You have to oppose bills like this. Sorry, we're talking about.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi. Because Justice Patel spoke
just
about...
identify yourself, please.
My name is Karthik, I'm a student of this college. Because Justice Patel spoke about making the grounds of restriction as narrow as possible, and he spoke about courts. If I may just get slightly technical here, we know that the Article 19.2 grounds, those 8 grounds are exhaustive. This has been settled law for 60 years now. But in practice, this principle is kind of invisible. And let me just give out this one aspect which I found to be a little strange. In the electoral bonds judgment and in many other judgments, what courts will do is that they will compare 119 right and 121 right, or two different 19 rights, and then the 21 right will beat the 19 right, but the 21 right is actually not attributable to any of those 8 grounds, therefore undermining the exhaustiveness principle.
So the judgments are
how do we reconcile?
You can't.
How do we can't? If I may ask Aarti ma'am, because yeah.
You can't.
Because in Kamala's case, if I remember correctly, as you said, one of the arguments of the Solicitor General was...
So there is such a thing as a wrong judgment.
This judgment wasn't for the record.
No, but the examples you give... The judgments are wrong. Live to fight another day. That's what you're in law college for.
Right. If the panel can.
Only two people on the panel have understood the question. I fell asleep on Article 19 BC or whatever the hell it was.
Correct. Do I see any other hands?
Yeah,
Ah, there's one of the.
I am Mudit Jain, businessman. A question to you, Harish. It seems to me the judge and prosecutor become one. That is, the government is both the judge and the prosecutor, even though we have courts and we have got the executive. My question is, should we have an independent body to take care of these calls and not the government?
You have to answer.
It's me?
It's you.
Yeah, it's directed at
Yeah, you're responsible for some of this.
Sorry, I was looking at
No,
my
no.
panelists. All right. Would you just repeat it, please? Would you say it again?
Yeah, I was saying the judge and prosecutor become one. The government acts like a prosecutor too. Even though there's a judiciary, there's an executive, but the government tramples them all. So should there be another super body which then takes care of this and not the government? Because they appoint, they do so many things. So we all know where the power lays. So can you have an extra body which is not part of this power process?
Look, in some way, we emulate Bollywood. Have you seen a Bollywood court case where the judge becomes a witness, the witness becomes a prosecutor? Yes, this is, but obviously these are absolutely illegal and they're total aberrations. So obviously it has to be. But the whole idea, the concept of a judiciary is that he's sworn to independence. He's sworn to the Constitution and he swears by being independent, free from all influences. But human frailties being what they are, and also your capacity to absorb arguments, analyze judgments, etc., you may fall short. That's about it. But we have a judiciary and a judiciary to be proud of. And that, as long as that remains, as long as that is intact and their integrity is beyond reproach, there is a huge silver lining that we have in this country. That's what I personally believe.
Send me a movie list. Send me a movie list.
Okay.
Because I don't believe this. But there's somebody else at the back.
Yeah.
I think perhaps Justice Patel would
Can't always be me.
They want free legal advice, not a joke.
That's not happening
We
now.
all agree that it is the tendency of governments and the state in general across the world to suppress inconvenient speech and to amplify convenient speech. And given that that's sort of the case, I feel like the motion itself is sort of a non-starter because overreach is obviously going to happen and it should be done away with. But I wonder if we are perhaps missing something that's staring us in the face in the motion itself, which is you feel that the actual perpetrators of censorship are social media companies themselves? Because if you look at censorship as the process of preventing speech from reaching its intended audience, through the process of engineering silos and echo chambers and stuff, you feel like social media companies themselves are actually creating an environment of censorship? And are we as the state encouraging that by giving them a safe harbor? Like, should we revisit the whole idea of a safe harbor for these social?
Aarti, that's yours.
For obvious reasons, but
Aarti, Keshu, these are yours. You can sing together. Duet.
I completely agree. I mean, I think I started on that note that we need to approach social media companies with a lot of skepticism. No easy solutions, but yes, algorithms are not as innocuous. They're not just bits of code that junior engineers come up with. They now define our ability to think, our ability to process information, the information that we receive. Our cognitive autonomy is being threatened by the way social media companies algorithmically engineer our words. And I think we as citizens need to demand more transparency. We need to be able to take a harder look at social media. We need to be more aware of how our feeds come to us. We need to ask these questions not through the government necessarily, but yes, there is a very powerful kind of censorship, and this then has real world impacts, whether it is how, information about certain violent actions by government is just, very innocuously taken out of our feed. We've seen that happening when it comes to the violence and the attacks on Gaza, and how a lot of Palestinian voices are being filtered out by social media companies. So yes, censorship is not only government versus citizen, it is corporation versus citizen. Justice Patel is right in saying it is perhaps easier to control corporations, but the point here is that you're dealing with 2 or 3 companies that now have an uncomfortable proximity to government. So it's going to be a very tough nut to crack. But perhaps it has to start with an acknowledgement that yes, censorship is starting from the company levels, from the social media level, and not just from government.
Yes, I think that, you summed it up very well. But even if it's only to corporations or companies, there will always be competition between them. So free market economy is going to bring about a choice that you may have on which social media platform you want to follow or what you want to do. And right now there isn't, because, and what, just to differ here, are those corporations close to the government, or the government has gotten close to the corporations? You see, you have to realize the government is not literally giving any corporation the freedom to do what they want to do. If they have to operate, you have the laws that are in place. So the free market economy is not going to function. Even why go Gaza? Look at Manipur. How many people here even know what is happening in Manipur? And there's a shutdown, exactly. And India is the #1 internet shutdown country in the world. So this is not even, so what can a corporation do when the internet is shut down? So what I was telling you earlier, that this is such a massive piece of pie to influence people right where it matters, in their heads. Which government in the world is going to let it pass? It's impossible. So I do not think this is India-centric or US-centric. I think every country in the world would want to capture this, because that's how they would continue to stay in power. And there would never be free market economies even amongst corporations, even if they're not 3, even if they're 30. This is the way I see it.
Actually, we should really be grateful that we have such quirky politicians. Because but for them, what would Cyrus Brocha do? Not them. Yeah, so can we...
No more questions.
Nikhil, I'm a 4th-year student here. My question is, what can I do? I am a person on social media and my account is shut down to the control of the government of social media. Can I go to a court and force my fundamental right of free speech, and social media, the company being a private entity in this case, especially in the background of the judgment of Kaushal Kishore? My question is to Professor Daswani and Arti. Thank you.
Arti, don't answer. You have to pay her fees. Correct. You're not getting free legal advice here.
Sorry, your question was if the government had shut down your account, or it's just been shut down and you don't know why?
As you said, there's a wide control as of now. We never know. If an account is shut down in any case, can I go to a court to enforce my fundamental right with the social media company being a private?
That's an excellent question, because as of now, a social media company, you can't file a petition against a social media company. If you are aware that there is a government action that prompted the takedown, and that's part of Twitter's challenge, because under the IT Act, there is a blocking rule, a set of blocking rules that has a very strict procedure. You need to get notice, you need to be heard, there needs to be a reasoned order as to why your account or certain content is being taken down, and only then can blocking be effective. But now through this Sajo platform, there is a backdoor way in which the government is exercising this power, where sundry government officials are issuing orders for certain information, accounts, etc. to be blocked. So currently, the only thing you can do under the IT rules, if something happens to your account, is to write to the grievance redressal officer. That then goes to a grievance redressal appellate committee, which is a government constituted body. And from there, you may have a further recourse to a writ court. But directly against an intermediary, no. Against a government action which is arbitrary, potentially you may have a writ remedy.
Which year are you in? Fourth year. Simple fundamentals of law of contracts. Your social media account is a contractual obligation between the corporation and you, and when in a hurry to open the account, you tick the button without reading all the conditions, you will know they can shut down your account whenever they want without assigning a reason. Maybe your question would be a little bit more complex if you ask whether internet is a fundamental right. See, because your social media account is a contractual obligation, can internet be a fundamental right?
Honorable Basin.
Exactly.
Sorry, exactly means what?
It is.
It is.
Access.
Whoever decided. All those in favor.
See, because that would be the bigger question about your freedom of speech and the ability and how important internet is to our existential basis. Whereas a social media account would be purely a contract, it can be shut down anytime. And the media companies have full control over what they want to do. And the media, social media companies also are under the regulator. And the regulator, as you heard, is no longer got judicial oversight because of the cyber crime.
But
And
can you
in
just,
fact,
sorry.
this is this is a time wherein, because X is pushing back on the cyber platform, whether the other social media companies would also go with them, because so far the rest of them have agreed to the cyber rules.
But just consider this, can the jurisprudence not be extended a bit to monopolistic corporations, which are there, which are tolerated with the permission of the government? Now, if you're a monopoly, you become a power center. And if you trample upon people's fundamental rights of free speech, I think the time has come where the judiciary could take a more broad-based approach, a more proactive approach, and not tolerate monopolies. This matter was tested once many, many years ago in the context of BCCI. In the context of BCCI, where a cricketer had, in that sense, defamed or rather said something about the selectors, calling them a bunch of jokers. And at that time, we had challenged this in the Delhi High Court, but the Delhi High Court said that no, the BCCI is not a state or an authority under Article 12. The matter went to the Supreme Court and it was eventually settled. Some sort of loose apology was accepted. But then subsequently, the BCCI has been considered to be a state simply because it's a monopoly which has the right to select a person to play for the country. And if that is so, then it's an extension of the Ministry of Sports, because it's in that sense a power center. So perhaps if you're talking about a corporation which has such monopolistic powers and does tamper with your free speech, this is a jurisprudence that's crying out, and we have a proactive former judge over here. I'd love to argue it before him.
So I would like to ask in the other way around, that the same question, that in the era of liberalization, globalization and privatization, is there a need to relook to Article 12 and the amendment is required whether private institution should be included in Article 12 so that the fundamental rights can be enforced against such corporations and the institutions, private institutions specifically.
Next year.
Cyrus, go for it.
Let me give you Article 59C.
That was really evil. That was really evil.
We could be on belief. Charging me on by the minute. My social contract with him is already defined, and I can't go to court at this time at least. There's no night court. Is it night court? Can we dress appropriately for it, or we can come in pajamas? For death penalty cases. Sorry, we're having our own show. Who would like to answer the question?
I think this calls for a
second panel discussion.
So I think on that note, let's call it an evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If it fits anything like this, remembering the words of Korea's greatest poet Kim Jong-un, who said, "What are you? Ban the internet."
Thank you. Thank you, panelists, for that enriching discussion. With that, we come to the end of the panel discussion for the evening. We must once again applaud all our panelists as well as our moderator for a thought-provoking discussion. I would now like to request Ms. Disha Sonavane, Assistant General Secretary of the Moot Court Association, to give the vote of thanks.
A very good evening to everyone present here with us today. Our esteemed panelists for the evening, Moderator Mr. Harish Jagtiani, our Madam Principal Dr. Mrs. Asmita Vaidya, Mr. Anil Harish, Mrs. Shobha Jagtiani, all members from the Harish and Jagtiani families present here, dignitaries from the DM Harish Foundation, our Professor in Charge, Assistant Professor Nuzhat Sheikh, participants, members of the Moot Court Association, and ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to be addressing this audience on behalf of the organizers of this esteemed event. The Moot Court Association has been organizing this moot in association with the DM Harish Foundation for the last 26 years. Having delved into a diverse set of subject matter like artificial intelligence, double taxation, black money, diversity in communities and their constitutional rights, information and accountability as pillars of democracy, and sports in the modern world, this segment of the moot always provides for an intriguing and thought-provoking deliberation amongst experts on matters of national and international importance. We are truly grateful to the DM Harish Foundation for trusting us with organizing this event year after year. Today's panel discussion has highlighted the critical need for ongoing dialogue regarding free speech and censorship as we navigate the challenges posed by social media. While the world moves towards accepting online debate and dialogue, we are reminded of the need of delicately balancing individual freedoms and necessitated regulations. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our panelists for the evening, Honorable Mr. Justice Patel, His Excellency Mr. Devon, Mr. Ashwin Sanghi, Mr. Cyrus Brocha, Ms. Aarti Raghavan, and our very own Professor Daswani for sparing their invaluable time and engaging us with such a wonderful discussion. I would also like to sincerely thank our moderator, Mr. Harish Jagtiani, for maneuvering this discussion with such insight. Our Madam Principal, Dr. Mrs. Asmita Vaidya, has been a pillar of guidance for the Moot Court Association. I would like to express my gratitude to her for always being so welcoming for all our endeavors. I'd like to thank our Professor in Charge, Assistant Professor Nuzhat Sheikh, for being a source of direction for us. We are grateful for all your support and towards your for your patronage towards the committee. The legacy of the DM Harish Moot, which has already completed 25 glorious years, is highly revered, and it is our honor to be associated with such a prestigious name. My most sincere gratitude to Mr. Anil Harish and Mrs. Shobha Jagtiani and all trustees of the DM Harish Foundation. This event truly would not have been possible without your guidance and support. Your continued assistance in bringing every last detail together is absolutely indispensable to us. I would also like to thank the members and post holders of the Moot Court Association for their devotion towards the activities of the committee. Their dedication has contributed immensely towards making this event a resounding success. No event in this college is possible without the constant help of the entire college administration and the staff, including the cleaners and the watchmen. I would like to thank Ajit Kaka, Jadav Kaka, Prajakta ma'am, Manish Kaka, Rakhi ma'am and Siddesh sir for their dedication towards the college. Finally, I would like to extend my most sincere gratitude for all the participants who have come down to Mumbai from all across the country for participating in this competition. I truly hope that you have had an enriching and fulfilling experience so far, and we look forward to further seeing enthralling round of arguments as we move closer towards the final round. I wish you all a very pleasant evening and good luck to the teams for further rounds. To end this discussion on a solemn note, I would request everyone to rise for the state song followed by the national anthem. I would like to request our audience to be seated while we escort our guests.
Let's say suppose the chief says, no, I don't give you money.